It's May 4th, 2020. This is Roqe. The word hero is getting a lot of currency these days, and it's hard to tell exactly when and how it should be applied. But surely healthcare workers deserve this appellation given the current global situation. And there are no shortage of people doing important work in healthcare in the Iranian diaspora. But how about a doctor on the front lines of the pandemic in one of the places where it has hit hardest, Paris, who becomes infected with COVID, recovers, and heads straight back to the hospital front lines? Dr. Arshid Azarine joins me today from France on matters and music of the heart. This is Conversations from, to, and about the Iranian diaspora. I'm Jian Ghomeshi. This is Roqe. Welcome to episode number 6 of Roqe. Thank you for joining us. امیدوار هستم که خوب هستین. Shaya, how are you doing? Doing well?
I'm great.
Good.
And I think you have to say امیدوار هستم که خوب باشین.
خوب هستین نمیشه؟
امیدوارم که
خوب باشین. هستین؟
Actually it wasn't wrong but
یعنی حتی وقتی که فارسی حرف میزنم همیشه خرابش میکنم. Thank you, Shaya, for correcting me 30 seconds into the show. We are just by the way, if you don't understand Farsi, you missed nothing in that conversation. There's nothing you missed. Except I hope everybody's doing okay out there. We're just 2.5 weeks into this new program, and we really haven't had the chance or resources to promote it. Just sort of announced it on Facebook, really. But thanks to you guys out there, we've already had over 15,000 streams across our platforms. A whole lot of people subscribing on YouTube and for our podcast on iTunes, and it's also on SoundCloud and Spotify. So thank you all. We still don't have a website ready, but it's coming. I think we said that on the first episode too. We have a website coming. We'll be saying that in 6 months from now, but it's coming, really. Also, people are messaging us asking when new episodes are to be anticipated. And I can tell you now that every Monday and Thursday evening, we will drop a new episode. And you can call us out if we ever fail to do so. We have booked some really interesting guests for the coming weeks already from all over the world, the global Iranian community. Can't wait to get to that. But most important, let me get to today's guest, who really is something special. Take a listen to this. Just a very quick sample of some of the stellar music that comes from the imagination and hands of my guest today. Think of a cardiovascular radiologist, a humanitarian aid organizer, and a professional musician who's a major figure in Persian jazz. Where would you come across these three people together? Well, believe it or not, you can meet all three of them in one, the singular Dr. Arshid Azarine. Dr. Azadin directs the cardiovascular imaging unit at the St. Joseph Hospital in Paris, where he's one of the few artificial intelligence specialists working in this field across the globe. With that said, he has most recently been on the front lines of treating patients in the middle of this global pandemic that has hit France particularly hard. But that's not all either. Arshid is a notable musician who's played a significant role in the renewal of Persian jazz since the 1990s. Arshid is the founder of several fusion jazz groups like the Azadin Six or the Arshid Azarine Trio, labs of musical experimentation, incubators mixing modern jazz, world poetry, and unexpected guests at each performance. He is an Iranian Frenchman who is a truly remarkable specimen and one of those contemporary heroes we've correctly identified during this this pandemic. Dr. Arshid Azarine joins me from Paris right now. Hello, Arshid.
Hello, Jian.
I'm so grateful that you're doing this today to shed some insight for us into your life these days. I can only imagine you're overwhelmed with your work and the magnitude of it. So, merci, Voran. Merci beaucoup. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you for your invitation. It's great being in this podcast with you.
Arshid, I have to start with what's happening in your current home city of Paris. It's no secret that France has been hit particularly hard by the pandemic. Almost 200,000 reported cases, over 25,000 deaths. How do you describe what you've witnessed in Paris in the last 2 months?
It was at the beginning like a war, actually. You know, I have been doing some humanitarian medicine, I would say, in Afghanistan, and I was somehow in the same conditions in a kind of a war medicine. That the difference was that the bullet can also go to the doctors, actually, because we were at risk doing our job.
You know, this metaphor of war, we hear this a lot, you know, from doctors to presidents saying, we're at war. As someone who just drew the metaphor directly to your own experience in Afghanistan, what part of it is like war? What can you express about what you're doing that feels like that?
When you are at your house, which is really helpful for the medical care and everything, maybe you don't see the hidden side of this disease in the hospitals. It's quite stressful because you don't know what to touch, what not to touch, and you don't see this enemy everywhere that can come, even you have even mask and everything, and you are doing your job. There are these droplets, and you discover about this virus every day. Maybe it is airborne, maybe not, and you have a lot of doubts about it. And the feeling of war is that you see, like in a war, you have some bullets which go to the heart of some of your colleagues because you had some doctors who died of it, or also, of course, other people. And you have some who get wounded and then get repaired and go back to the war. Mm-hmm. And others don't have anything and go through all the droplets or the bullets.
And we would hear, you know, France was a little ahead of North America. I mean, everybody now, even in North America, understands lockdowns and quarantines and wearing face masks. But it was shocking when the news was first coming out of places like Iran and then Italy and then France, and Macron was saying no one's allowed to go outside. What was it like, or what has it been like? I mean, it's not that it's over, in the emergency rooms. Can you describe in Paris, what the atmosphere has been like in there?
Well, the first part, which was really overwhelmed, it was the east of France, the cities like Mulhouse and Strasbourg, and really this part of France. They really had war conditions. I mean, they had to choose between this and this patient to push to ICU. And when you, as a doctor, you have to do some choices, it's very painful. I mean, it's not really your job to be in this situation, to say that, okay, this one is younger than this one, so this one goes, we cannot cure it, and this one goes to ICU. I mean, it's dramatic. So hopefully in Paris, we had less this situation, thanks to a better preparation and thanks to the transfer of some of the people who were sick to other points of Europe or France, and by canceling all the other activities of all the hospitals and starting to put all the COVID patients in all the services and transforming a lot of other services into ICUs to be able to cure all the patients in an appropriate way.
You're a doctor who's worked in ICUs and emergency rooms. You work with other doctors, certainly, I'm sure. You know, doctors, we've been calling you heroes, and I think we should call you that. Maybe I'll ask you later how you feel about being called that. But you're also just human beings. When something like this unprecedented pandemic hits as hard as it has, What were the conversations like with other doctors? Were you guys as scared as we would expect you to be?
Oh, no, I think we try to be, as always, trying to laugh about things and trying to cool it down because we have already the stress which is here. And maybe at the beginning of the outbreak, we were more freaked out all, but now we have to live with this for weeks and months. So we try to make fun of a lot of situations and things. Actually, I'm not directly in ICUs. I'm a cardiovascular radiologist. But as you know, maybe a lot of patients will have CT scan of the chest because this is the pulmonary lesions is the main point of this disease. So radiology departments are very exposed to these patients anyway.
Yes, I was going to ask you, you work in heart-related issues. So I wanted to know how heart-related issues or cardiovascular radiology coincides with COVID-19.
The thing is that all the doctors are doing COVIDology, I would say, because we have canceled all the rest. Actually, we had canceled all the rest for about 1 month just to try to cure most of the peak of this outbreak.
Yes.
And everybody was doing COVID, and even surgeons were doing some ICU things. And there was also some funny pictures of some radiologists saying, please stay at home, otherwise I would be the ICU doctor who will cure you. And this is not my specialty.
Right.
Meaning that everybody was involved into this. And if you had some colleagues who were sick or had the disease, then others had to come and replace. And I saw a lot of helpful doctors, dermatologists, ophthalmologists who are not really in this field, but try to help as they could their colleagues.
All hands on deck, as they say.
Yeah, all hands on deck. And concerning cardiovascular disease, actually you have cardiovascular lesions also in this disease, and you can have some problems of the heart, like infection of the heart and some, this storm of cytokines, which can also give cardiac injuries.
Well, I don't want to get too far into the weeds on this, but because I have so much to ask you, but I've been hearing about younger people, because obviously this disease hits the very old very, very, very hard, but younger people getting a stroke or having heart trouble because of coronavirus. Can you tell us anything about that?
Yes, actually, 2 days ago I had one, actually 14 years old boy who had myocarditis, this infection of the heart by the virus. Actually, it's quite often that we have, even with the influenza, this kind of cardiac lesions. We had a lot with the MERS, the coronavirus of the Saudi Arabia, which was also a lot in Iran. Another thing which is happening right now, it's the Kawasaki syndrome. Is a high fever in children that can give also some lesions on the coronary arteries. And they found out that, and the season is actually the spring. And they found out that they have more of these cases right now than in other years. So they are considering that maybe there is an association or something like that happening with the coronavirus.
It feels like the implications of this wretched disease it feels like every week we learn something new, as if, it's twisting and turning and hitting in ways that we hadn't expected, and which is quite destabilizing, as somebody who doesn't work in your field and kind of just wants to know what's going on. Is there that much lack of information about this that it keeps transforming itself almost into new areas of danger?
Yes, it is. Every day we discover new things about it. And maybe one thing that can excuse the lack of preparation of everybody was that, it's a known virus, which is quite of high virulence, and we discover every day new things about it.
Arshid, before getting into your extraordinary life and your artistic pursuits, I must ask you about a traumatic experience that impacted you most recently. You yourself became infected with coronavirus. How did you first find out, and what were your feelings when you realized you'd become infected with the disease you're so desperately trying to help your patients deal with?
Well, yes, actually, I had these symptoms that you see everywhere, but at the beginning, you wonder if it is something, or maybe some influenza or something that's happening to you, and you don't want to believe. Then they became more important and painful. Also, I had some chest pain, which is quite often seen in this disease. And as I was going to the work, I did a CT scan, and we saw the lesions on my lungs. So the day after, I stopped not to infect my colleagues and other patients. Well, at this point, you see all these literature, and as a doctor, I was seeing all that and all these different things, and you see this new discoveries, and you see the level of the stress going really high, and which doesn't help the rest of your feeling neither to heal. Something really strange that you see in this disease. It's this high level of stress in sick people, but also in the medical staff, because when you know that it is a bad enemy or less virulent enemy, but you know it, you know how to deal with it. But when you don't know it, you don't even know if it is something really soft or not. And this ignorance part, it's quite stressful.
So how badly did you get hit? Did it? We hear these. We hear about the high temperature.
Mine was mild to moderate. In 2-3 weeks, it was gone. But it was very big fatigue and big asthenia. How do you say that? This.
What is it?
You're very, very, very tired, actually. And you don't loss of energy, and
I guess you had to go into quarantine. Were you being treated in the hospital, or did you just stay home?
No, I stayed home. And that was really near the peak, so you couldn't go to the hospital for nothing, actually. So
it wasn't nothing. Time, you had corona, but that's a quite modest way to put it, for nothing. But you talk about the stress part. You're listen. You clearly have a scientific way of answering some of these questions, but you're an artist too. So I'm going to appeal to your emotional side here. You're a doctor who no doubt has to consider how to help patients with the mental and emotional side of finding out they've been infected by a disease that the world is now fearing. What did you tell yourself? How did you cope mentally?
I'm quite a cool person, and everybody knows me as somebody really positive and cool, and everybody was surprised that I was freaking out at this moment.
Oh, you were freaking out.
I was.
Okay.
I can say it now, but I don't know exactly why. But I think that this loss of energy when you are a little bit weak, and you don't have enough energy also to be positive. So and all these colleagues were sending me new papers, to interesting things, but about the worst things that can happen with
that wasn't
disease.
Helping, right? Yeah.
And,
could you have mentioned to your colleagues that to stop the emails for a day or two while you recover from COVID-19? Did you go to we kid now, but I'm so شکر خدا که دیگه بهتر شدی. ولی did you go to a dark place in your mind that this could be some kind of terminal situation?
Well, yeah, for one night I had some doubts, and I was wondering if the morning I will wake up. That happened to me one night. Yeah, I had some symptoms, but then I did the tests for these things, because you have a lot of complications with that. The results was good for me, so then objectively I could think that everything is fine, and I have just to wait for this to finish.
So then you recover from COVID-19, and what does Arshid Azarine do? You go right back to the front lines, where the war against the pandemic is still raging and sadly taking many casualties. Tell me about this extraordinary decision.
Well, I think that Tom and all my colleagues who had the disease and then cured, and they went back to the work. And it's quite normal, actually, to do that, because you are needed by some patients that are in the disease or have other cardiovascular disease who can be fatal. If I don't go there, there's a lack of chance for them. So there's not even a question of thinking about it.
Arshid, no one would blame you if you decided to take a break. Where do you find the strength to go right back? I know you're a doctor. I know this is what you do. I know your colleague. But where do you find the strength to go right back to the front lines?
During all this time, I was doing what we call télétravail, which is working from home and things. So I had my assistants and residents working there, and I was seeing the cases from there. And I tried to do it also quite during 3 weeks, which is quite a good and long time to rest. In my department, they were quite cool. They didn't program me really fastly, and I could do this work from home even the fourth week after this. But I started really once I had the energy back to my body and feeling good to go back to the work. But I wouldn't frighten people about this situation. I mean, it's something that we don't know, but hopefully we will know it better and better, and we will win anyway.
This is Roqe, Conversations from, to, and about the Iranian diaspora. I'm Jian Ghomeshi. Dr. Arshid Azarine is joining me from Paris, France. So, Arshid, take me back now to how your very interesting journey has evolved. I must say, I know of you as the amazing piano player who's also a doctor, not the doctor who's also a musician. And I should say, you're not just a doctor who plays some cover gigs with his friends on the weekend. You're a recording artist with a major career and these incredible jazz chops. This is a fascinating duality. We've just spent half an hour talking to you as a doctor. You are really the Persian overachiever. So how did these seemingly parallel careers come together for you?
Well, actually, when I was 8 and a half or 9, I started piano. Quite at that moment, I had a teacher who wasn't really serious, and I asked my parents to go to something a little bit tougher and harder because I really wanted something. So I had this Armenian piano teacher who was also a halterophile. How do you say that?
A weightlifter.
Yeah. That was indeed a tougher guy. But he was a Chopinist, and he really transmitted me the passion of classical music and music. At the same time, we were looking at the television with my sister, Dr. Bernard, I think, doing some open heart surgery, and I said, okay, I want to do that. That stayed in my mind even when we had to leave Iran during the hard times of the beginning of the immigration, and when even we didn't have any piano, and suddenly, actually, the piano, and which was in the school, became a kind of communication between me and the other French kids and even teachers, and that was normalizing me a little bit in their eyes.
Oh, wow. Did your parents insist on one path or the other? I mean, a lot of Persian parents insist on an academic path before you can get involved in the arts. What were your parents like in this regard?
As I wanted myself to do both, I mean, this heart surgery, I think, was always in my mind. They didn't have to force me, actually, to do things. I love this human body anyway. And I was doing the piano also when I was first a year of medicine. Here we passed competition, a concours. And there, my parents said, okay, now it's serious, you stop the piano. And I didn't pass the exam, actually. And the year after, I said, okay, so it's cool anyway. I maybe won't have it. So I started to do some concerts, and I did some concerts, and I passed. And I told myself, so maybe I have to do both at the same time. Maybe there is a kind of equilibrium of me, the other, helping each other.
You know, this duality of you doing the music and the medicine seems so unique. And yet, when I started looking into it, there's actually it's not that ajib. You know, there's a tradition of this. I've been reading that according to ancient and medieval Persian medical traditions, having a commanding knowledge of music was a prerequisite in becoming a tabib, a doctor. So these medical pioneers like Muhammad Zakaria Razi, one of the greatest names in medieval Persian medicine in the 9th century, was also a musician. Do you know about this? And when did the realms of music and medicine start to diverge from each other then?
I always love this humanist tradition. We are, all these things are part of a whole. We are, in this modern world, have to be very specialized. If you like it, so do it. And about music and medicine, it's a whole big discussion. And traditionally, you had it in the south of Iran a lot. Still now, all this tradition of Zar, this kind of music therapy. You had it in the south of Italia with this La Taranta, and also in Africa a lot. There are many articles in very serious journals of medicine between the heartbeats and the rhythms of African music. And
But that's true today too, isn't it? Isn't it true that there's operating rooms in hospitals now that offer classical music as an option for the surgeon and patient?
In some of hospitals, they do that. Sometimes very seriously with trying to replace, not to replace, but to lighten the anesthesia. A lot of my colleagues who love jazz, they operate only with jazz music or with classical music or with the music they like, I guess. Maybe not the heavy metal on the that could be.
There's nothing wrong with some metal in the middle of a heart surgery. Just play some Sabbath. So I don't want to be crude about this, but is it fair to say music can heal?
Oh yes, it really does. It really does. It's another way to heal, I would say. It's another way to heal. It gives energy. This is also a very thing that was in the New England of Medicine, which is a big journal of medicine. And they said that the variation of music and rhythms that you can find in some classical music gives better feeling of being and giving a better immunity. They had studied that with different biomarkers and things like that in music. So I think that more and more we can and we will discover the influence of these things that gives you well-being, and music is one of these things, and which will make you do some hormones and endorphins maybe, and other things which will give you better immunity for your life. I will just point to this film of Jim Jarmusch, Coffee and Cigarettes, and I didn't.
I love Jarmusch. Yeah.
And he speaks a lot about music and medicine, starting with Tom Waits, who was a medical student. He studied until the 5th years, I think. But I don't know if you remember this part of his film where he said, but I'm a doctor. I went to rescue this guy who had a cardiac arrest or something. That was in one of the parts of the movie, and they speak about medicine and music and African music. That touched me, but I didn't know what is behind this. We should ask Jim Jarmusch sometime.
I have to ask about your music. I honestly, I haven't heard that much about Persian jazz until I started listening to you. How do you, for someone who doesn't know what Persian jazz is or what it means, how do you describe it?
Oh yeah, actually, music is music, and what we try to do a bit calling this Persian jazz. Uh, that was also a conversation we had a little bit with Mahan Mir Arab, who's a very good guitarist who lives in Vienna, of Persian descent, is Iranian, and he does this mixture of melodies of different Iranian traditions or folklores mixed with the harmonies of jazz. That can be this kind of thing. That can be some words, Persian words, coming into some other jazz settings. That would be maybe Semin Samawati, somehow, who is also in Germany doing this kind of music. And that can be also the rhythms of the music, which is, in Iranian rhythms, you have 7 beats, you have 5 beats, you have 9 beats, you have 11 beats.
Yep.
And this kind of bit, sometimes when it is down very intellectually, it doesn't sound very natural. But when you listen it to in Iranian Persian music or also Afghan music, you have a lot of that. It's really natural, and it's like the melody. Yeah, it's like a river.
Shaya's got a little bit of your music queued up here. An example of Arshid Azarine doing Persian jazz. Take a listen to this. That's Arshid Azarine on the piano there. Tell us about that recording. Tell us about what you're doing there and how that relates to Persian jazz.
In this piece, which is called Yeki Bud Ya Nabud, I'm doing different kind of approach with this Persian traditions. You have the rhythm, which is 11. Then you have different melodies at the beginning, which are more Persian. And at the end, you have this dance rhythm, actually the real rhythm of Iranian dance, which was a little clin d'oeil, kind of like a joke, to put this 6/8 dance music that we love of it a lot when we try to do some serious music. We say 6/8 Iranian 6/8 for dance, and I wanted to put it inside this music, saying that every music is music. I mean, there's no serious music and not serious music, and but you have this rhythm of dance, which really gives, I would say, this joy of being Iranian, with different chords and harmonies, which are more jazz and. We call that also. Sorry. Are you hearing? These are people at the windows closing the.
Oh, is that the people? They're clapping for the medical workers.
Yeah. These are the people who are closing the medical staff here.
Wow. So that's for you.
Kind of. Yeah.
That's incredible. What a great moment to. Can you set the scene? Where are you? You're in a house, in an apartment in Paris?
Yes, I'm in the kitchen, at my window. Actually, it's not very far from the Tour Eiffel, the Eiffel Tower. And every night at 8 p.m., people applaud to say thank you to the medical staff, actually, in the hospitals. So the first days when I was coming back at about 8, when I saw that, it really gives you energy, actually, when you have had a hard time during the day.
That's amazing. What fortuitous timing for us to be able to hear that. And kudos to you. You deserve those applause.
Thanks. Yes. So maybe I just finished my, as you said, you can really discuss this Persian jazz thing, but we are in a world, the producers want some etiquette, want to give you some marketing things. So this Persian jazz is a good thing also to distinguish you.
Sorry, I bought into the marketing to use the term, but it was curious. I was kind of like, well, what is Persian? I mean, it does make sense. You're basically the funny thing about jazz, in my experience, and getting to have the good fortune to meet some great jazz players and stuff, is it can really be anything. I mean, it is expansive. So Persian jazz is it is a funny sort of denomination to sort of call something that, but it was enjoyable to hear what you describe it as. Arshid, you're also deeply involved in trying to bring, in your musical projects, to bring together Iranians across the diaspora. This makes you so perfect for this program. Your latest album, Sing Me a Song, for this album you assembled 16 musicians from London, from Vienna, from Tehran, from Los Angeles. What is the message of the record? What did you want to do this for, and specifically how it relates to the Iranian diaspora around the world?
Yes, I wanted to find back this unity of being together again with different generations. We all went in different countries at different moments, before the revolution, after the revolution. So we had different ways of diaspora coming out of Iran. And we have developed different sensitivities in the different neighborhood that we are living in. That gives also an interesting cultural thing. Even if I wonder if everybody comes back, which language we will speak together. but musically, it gives a lot of different sensitivity, which is quite interesting. And another point which was interesting for me is that during some years after the revolution, it was not very easy to produce music in Iran. And a lot of this music was coming from abroad, and maybe mostly from Tehran or Los Angeles. This gave kind of particular cultural kind of music from there. And then suddenly, when it was easier to produce music in Iran, Persian music and traditional music was developed a lot at the beginning, and little by little we had also the influence of this Persian music coming from abroad, going inside and evolving during years, and making a mix in the young generation that we see here, which is very amazing. And it's like fresh air, and like a boomerang, it comes back now from Tehran to us, and giving us this new Persian music with this new generation who has kind of mixed naturally this evolution of traditional music with these other musics coming from the rest of the world. And I wanted to encounter these different people who have done this different kind of Persian music together from London, Paris, Los Angeles, and Tehran in a unique project.
This global Iranian community, the diaspora, in some ways, it's sad because we are very divided in some ways, politically, geographically. In some cases, there's different sort of indigenous versions of the Iranian communities that vary from place to place. The London Iranian community, the Tehrangeles community, the Toronto community. But then there's these markers of how, and I really do believe culturally is how we can find our unity, whether it's family values or kebab or the way we treat each other, or some of the traditions in poetry, etc. And I've got to think music is part of that. And is that what you're getting at when you talk about unity?
Exactly. Yes. Between people who don't speak the same language, music is a very good way to communicate. So, and also in the Iranian diaspora, it's also maybe the best way to try to get together and try to be as one. Actually, the project was recorded in different places at the beginning, but finally we we could really do this concert in last November in Paris, where everybody moved from their country, and they met each other for the first time actually in November all together during this concert.
I've kept you a long time. I can't keep you any longer. I know. But I am truly in awe of all that you're doing right now as a doctor, as a frontline worker, as an inspirational recording artist, as someone who's initiated kids charities. Let me ask you one more simple question. And that is, what motivates you to do all of this? I mean, even as we were preparing for this interview, you were kindly texting me back at 2 a.m. your time to send me clips of your favorite songs. Where is the desire to do so much in you? Where does that come from in Arshid Azarine?
Nice question. Do you know Boris Vian? He's a French writer, Boris Vian, who has written some of the best books of French literature. He was a trumpet jazz player, a songwriter. He was a mathematician. He has done this. I don't know if it was Telecom or Polytechnic, which is high-end engineering school in France. So for me, he was, as I was young, a kind of example. And he has this poem where he says it's a very nice poem. I want to do that, 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 and at the end it's before to die. Mm-hmm. And maybe it's this being afraid, actually, to not to have done what I love to do before dying. Maybe it's that, I don't know. But the thing is that I'm doing what I love. Actually, I love both. I mean, it's real passion about the both things. It was maybe hard, actually, to access to a point where I can release these two dreams. But it takes time. You find a lot of people who would say to you, you have to choose or not to do that, not to do that. You will find more people actually who try to stop you. But I think that when you love something, you have to do it and don't ask questions to yourself.
I want to go out today on a beautiful piece of music you did recently with Roqe Arab called Hidden Hell. What can you tell us about it?
Oh, Roqe, I met her in Tehran. She's living in London. She was the first singer of the group Archive, which is world known. Funny, we are neighbors here, but we never met here, and we met once we were both in Tehran. The title of the song is Hidden Hell, which is quite appropriate of the situation that we are living in right now, with this kind of hell which is happening in the hospitals, with a lot of patients in the ICUs, a lot of deaths, but all this is hidden. And well, I hope you will like this song.
Arshid Azarine, thank you. Thank you for your work on the front lines. Thank you for your inspirational work in music. Thank you for your humanitarian work. Please stay safe. We need you, okay? Thanks for doing this today.
Thank you. Thank you for your invitation. It was nice talking to you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Dr. Arshid Azarine. He's a doctor, he's a musician, he's a humanitarian. He joined me from Paris, France today.
Sun comes up and we lay down, slumbering high till nightfall come. Close the door, come lay by my side. Lost in a place of late return, silver line bars, endless pleasure to pay. Hidden hell we may top of the tower we am.
Arshid Azarine, the song Hidden Hell from his latest recording. That's him arranging the music and on piano, and this track features Roya Arab on vocals and lyrics. This is Full Time for Roqe today. Remember, you can email us at info@roqemedia.com. Subscribe on any of our platforms. Thank you so much to the amazing little Roqe team. I'm Jian Ghomeshi. Mizun Bashin.
Hidden hell we made. Top of the tower we am. Hidden hell we made. Forgive and forget failings of fate. Golden spoon laced with guilt and shame. Laced with guilt, laced with guilt. Guilt and shame, guilt and shame, guilt and shame.